G-Man Boxing. Do you know what I mean? Every single live he donates. I see him on other lives donating. He's got the bag on it.
Alright, people. So next week is Dillian Whyte versus Otto Wallin, right? And I'm probably going to record my prediction tonight at some stage. I'll probably upload that Wednesday. But I got to get this out this evening at some stage. It's with regards to the undercard. And the lack thereof of real kind of fights that perk your interest, kind of. And I'm saying that because by Dillian Whyte's standards, this is a pretty weak undercard. It has to be said. I mean, if we go back and we look through Dillian Whyte's fights where he's main evented on Sky, okay, like his pay-per-views, recurring theme is that they're normally quite strong undercards. I mean, for example, you look at that card in Gibraltar. What did you have? You had Fabio Wadley versus Eric Molina. Was it Eric Molina? I'll double check there now. But I'm pretty sure it was Wadley versus Molina. You had JJ Metcalf versus Ted Cheeseman. You had Chris Congo versus Michael McKinson. You had Eric Pfeiffer versus Nick Webb. And yeah, you did have Fabio Wadley, Eric Molina, amongst other fights. So that was a really, really strong undercard. The Povetkin first fight. Now, has to be said, that Povetkin first fight, that was at a time where I don't think you were allowed any more than 5 fights on any card by the British Boxing Board of Control. But it had Katie Taylor in a rematch versus Pursuin. Had Jack Cullen versus Zach Chelly. That was a good fight. You had Alan Babbich versus Shondale Winters. And you had Luther Clay versus Chris Congo. They didn't have much in the way to be able to work with, to be fair, for that fight. But still quite good. The Marius Vac fight, that was on AJ's undercard, so we don't count that. Let's look, Dillian Whyte versus Oscar Rivas. David Price versus Dave Allen. That was a good fight. Richard Riakporhe versus Chris Billum-Smith. A good fight. Derek Chisora versus Spilka. Lawrence Akali versus Mario Angel. Who else did you have? Fabio Wadley versus someone else. You had Alan good enough undercard. You know, reasonably strong undercard. But let's just go and have a look-see at this. I'm going to do a little kind of quick predict on all the fights, but I'm going to address them here. First fight, it's a very weak undercard. Now, I know we can say, look, they were pay-per-view G, this isn't, and I get that, but by Dillian Whyte's standards, it's a very weak undercard. John Hedges is fighting Anthony Worley now, or Woolery. He's 2-7, John Hedges is 3-0. I've seen John Hedges, I saw him on his pro debut, I've seen him in a subsequent fight. His pro debut was on the Joshua Buatsi Marco Calic card. That was about this time last year. And I have to say, John Hedges has not impressed me in the slightest. I think he's only about 19, 18. But he should have stayed amateur a little bit longer, because as a pro, he's not looked good for me. And personally, I felt he lost his pro debut. He got the nod, but he definitely should be 2-1 as far as I'm concerned. So we'll see how he goes. We'll see how if he's improved at all, but I really haven't been too impressed. Ellie Scottney versus Eva Cantos, who's 2-1. Yeah, Ellie Scottney is actually a good little fighter. You know, she's a super bantamweight. She's a common opponent with Ebony Bridges. The girl, that French girl, Ebony Bridges, fought last time out in Headingley. Ellie Scottney fought her, had no real problems with her, to be fair. Ebony Bridges had a lot of problems, judging by the fight I saw anyway. So Ellie Scottney is quite cool. You know, she is. And she's fun enough to watch. She's had a bit of bad luck this year with fights not happening, so hopefully that gets set up. We'll see how she gets on. Johnny Fisher, who's just really a prospect at this stage, the Romford Bull. Again, just really a prospect at this stage. He's fighting Alvaro Torrio, who's 5-13-2. Again, these are all like fights you have very early on in the night. Johnny Fisher, we'll need to see how he gets on. Apart from the main event, the only other fight I'm interested in, which is this one here, is Alan Babbich versus Eric Molina. Now, originally, Lucas Brown was meant to be the opponent, but Australia is away with the fairies at the minute with what's going on over there, so he couldn't really travel. So they had to bin that fight. Now, personally, I'm not unhappy about that, because although Lucas Brown has a better record on paper than Eric Molina, Lucas Brown, to say he's seen better days is an understatement. You know, I quote Boxing Squared when he made a video about this, you know, after his last fight to Paul Gannon, where he said Lucas Brown is basically a journeyman without the record. And I have to agree. Lucas Brown is shot to pieces. His punch resistance, realistically, Lucas Brown's been finished since that Shagayev fight. Now, that Shagayev fight, he was popped for subsequently. And I certainly at the time believed that he was set up. Because Shagayev over there in Chechnya is very close friends with the president. Frezakendo had issues when he was over there in 2014 in Chechnya. And I kind of thought, you know what? I reckon something went on there. But having seen how poor he's looked subsequently, and having him, he actually failed the test not long after. He was meant to fight Shannon Briggs, I believe. Having seen that, it made me actually stop and think, do you know what? Maybe Lucas Brown did do something, because it was the timing of it. You know, the fact that he was tested on the week of the fight and nothing happened, then I think he was tested just after it and then something happened, kind of made me thinking most fighters don't do that. But maybe Lucas Brown really, I don't know. But yeah, Lucas Brown really regressed badly after that fight. Badly. And for him against Babbich, I wasn't looking forward to it. Because Babbich is better than Paul Gannon, and Paul Gannon is a former rugby player, beat Lucas Brown in the round. Against Molina can box a bit, he can definitely punch. He's certainly a step up from the Mark Bennett's, you know, the Shondell Winters, the KO Kennedys of the world. Having said that, Molina, his biggest problem has always been his heart. I don't think his chin is as bad as people say it is. He's definitely not got an iron chin, but I think it's just his heart more so. That's the question. I think the minute Alan Babbich, put it like this, if Alan Babbich comes out swinging and it's really tough for Molina, expect him to go looking for a nice place to lie down. That's the one thing. You know, Molina is better than Lucas Brown. He can punch. He can box a bit. We saw that against Fabio Wadley. He is still got a little bit left there. But I think Babbich will just overwhelm him. And I think Molina, when Babbich starts to overwhelm him, put it on him, expect him to look for a place to lie down. Youssef Kuzamari, probably butchered the name. I remember him from the Povetkin Whyte rematch card. That was in Gibraltar. He's on here again. He's fighting a guy called Jorge David Castorina. That's for the WBC International Super Featherweight title. Again, I've seen him a few times. He's alright. It's not a fighter who I'm going to be jumping, to see. If it was Cash Veru or someone like that, yeah, maybe. But nah. Then we have Craig Spider Richards coming off the back of his loss against Dimitri Bivol. He gave a good account of himself, did Richards, but Richards he's never been the most entertaining fighter to watch. He's had a couple of performances that were entertaining, like against Jake Ball, but that was because he was fighting someone who on paper looked good but really wasn't. I mean, anyone could see that. He's fighting a guy called Market Matjaya, 20-2. Who has he fought? Because I have not heard of this guy. So was this guy any good? Who has he fought? Let's have a little look see his box rec. 2 losses on points. Lost to Powell Staffen, who I've never heard of. Beat Tony Avalon, who Anthony Yard beat. Actually had a draw with that guy he lost to, so they obviously had a rematch. Who else did he lose to? We had a draw with Darius Sek. That's a former Anthony Yard opponent. Now, I mean pre-Kovalev. So if you're having, these were the guys that Anthony Yard were fighting that me and several others were complaining about, being not good enough. So if you're having a draw with him, oh boy, that's not a good sign. So it's probably a routine performance for Craig Richards. Again, not a fight that I'm really interested in necessarily. I wonder, is this the co-main? They certainly have a high on box rec, but Chantel Cameron versus Mary McGee. I mean, they're doing some women's tournament at 140 pounds, the Crown Undisputed. Chantel Cameron is easy to watch. Yeah, she is. She's easy on the eye to watch in terms of her boxing ability. But nevertheless, it's still extremely. Chantel Cameron should win that on points probably. And then we have the main event, which is a good fight. It is. For all what I've been saying, the main event is a good fight, but my day is that's a weak undercard. I think we'll all agree. Obviously it's not pay-per-view. DAZN have teased that's what they're going to be doing. Well, they pretty much stated it actually. And Eddie Hearn has been trying to backtrack kind of on interviews he said years ago, where he did say DAZN don't do pay-per-view, to now saying, well, for the big fights, it is a pretty weak undercard. It has to be said. I don't think anyone's in disagreement about that. It is very weak. I have my suspicions as to why that is. I suspect that Dillian Whyte is obvious. Dillian Whyte and Otto are probably getting 6 figures. Or 7 figures, I should say. They're probably getting in the millions. Whereas everyone else on the card probably will be doing well to get into even the 6 figures. Maybe Babbich will get 6 figures, maybe Cameron, probably not, but maybe. But everyone else is probably going to be paid quite, kind of, there you go, here's your paycheck and on to the next one. Now, if we look at the card they had in Liverpool a couple of weeks ago, that was very good. You had Fowler Smith, you had Cheeseman versus Williamson, which was brilliant. You had Metcalf versus Conway, you had Shannon Courtney versus Jamie Mitchell. I think it's someone else as well on that card, but it was all good fights, domestic level dust-ups, fights that I'd like to see on this undercard. Why did we get them? Probably because I would say that no one made more than a couple of $100,000 on that card. Probably no one made more than that. Probably Cheeseman, Fowler and Smith. They're probably the ones who got paid the most, and it was probably a couple of $100,000 if even. So it was a lot cheaper to put on. Whereas this, they're paying Dillian Whyte because it's not pay-per-view. So it's not like Sky where they probably put this on pay-per-view, they get the pay-per-view revenue, etc. They could pay the guys on the undercard. So I reckon this is DAZN. I think that DAZN, I had high, and I still think that it maybe can work, but at this minute I think they're struggling. I think they're struggling because I genuinely think they maybe thought they would have got more subscriptions than they did, which is why they're talking about going down the pay-per-view road in the future. And I reckon the fact that Dillian Whyte and Wallin are probably making north of $1 million is probably why the undercard isn't as good. Now I know DAZN have deep pockets, but do you really want to take a loss on a show? Because again, it's not pay-per-view. This is going out to the subscribers of DAZN. So it's not like, because I think with Sky, even if you weren't subscribed to Sky, you could get the pay-per-view. It's not like that with DAZN. With DAZN, I think they lock you in for at least a couple of months. Do people really want to watch a once-off fight and then have to pay a couple of months of subscription? Some people do, some people don't. Some people aren't like that. So I reckon that's probably why the undercard isn't as good. I hope the DAZN model does succeed because I like it. I like, as I've said this several times, I like being able to just pay for what I want, not have to pay excessive and get loads of sport you don't have any intention of watching. I like being able to just say, right, boxing, yes, how much? £8. There you go. It's just boxing. It's just boxing. Nothing else chucked on top of that. You're not getting any sports that you no intention of watching is what I mean. So I like that. I like that. And that's why I hope DAZN succeed. It's obviously not as straightforward now. I think maybe they did think they would get more subscriptions than they have. Who knows, maybe with the up in price, maybe people cancelled. I know certainly, I think a few comments on the video I did about that, a few people said no, they were cancelling it after that. I expected it to go up. I didn't think it would go up to, I thought it'd be better around 5 or something like that, but look, £8, it is what it is. I suspect that's the reason why the undercard is quite weak, because as I said, look back at Dillian Whyte. Since Dillian Whyte started on pay-per-view against Joseph Parker, that Parker card was brilliant. I mean, how many good fights did we have on that card? The Rivas card was good. Both Povetkin cards were good. The Chisora card that he had in 2018 for the rematch, that was good. What else? I think that's really it. But they've all been pretty good cards, pretty good undercards. Decent fights, good domestic level clashes. We're not getting any of this really on this card. So I reckon it has to do with the fact that it's not on pay-per-view. The DAZN are maybe thinking, hang on a sec, we can't afford to be paying these guys astronomical. We can't afford to have like big fight, because it might take a loss on this show. And I suspect that maybe is the reasons why they're fearing taking a loss. You look at the Liverpool card, as I said, they didn't have to pay because they were all domestic level. How much did Troy Williamson get? Probably 60, 70 grand, maybe a little bit more. How much did JJ Metcalf and Kieran Conway get? In around the same. They probably didn't take as much of a loss. They probably didn't take any loss really on that show. Maybe they did, I don't know. But if they did take a loss, it wouldn't be as much as this if they were to put on, good undercard fight, a proper domestic level fight, and then another one, that sort of way. Like, imagine instead of Cheeseman Williamson happening in Liverpool, it happened on this card. Would they be willing to pay? You get me? So I reckon something like that is probably what's happening. That's why the undercard isn't as good. What are your thoughts on the undercard? I'd be interested to know. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, if you could, smash a like, hit subscribe and the old notification bell. Do you disagree? Do you think this card is actually good? Do you think that this is value for the £8? Do you think for £8, gee, you kind of have to you're kind of getting what you pay for? Let me know in the comment section. Hope you enjoyed. If you did, smash the like button. Peace.